And looks like we are live. Hey all, it's Thursday. It's another week, another time for our weekly OSS, Anchore OSS gardening session. We are the Anchore OSS engineering team. I'm Dan. We've got the full team on today. We got Keith, we got Will, we got Alex, we got Chris. Hey guys.
Howdy, howdy.
We use this session to talk about any and all things Anchor open source. We write tools for inspecting software, generating software bill of materials or bills of material. And then we also have some other projects that essentially take a look at all of that inspection material as actionable data and perform various functions on them, like vulnerability scanning, so some assessments. We do license scanning, other types of insights. And so we'd like to take this time every week to go through GitHub issues, GitHub PRs, anything coming in from the community, other topics of interest in our open source projects and community. So typically we like to start with our issues that are marked with needs discussion, PRs needs discussion, and we also have a Discord channel, discourse page where we can take a look at any conversations going on there. So maybe we should get into it. Let's kick over to the team first to see if there's any particular topic we want to cover today. Otherwise, we can start with our issues needs discussion labels.
Well, there was two that we were talking about earlier. One was, it was a false negative. I can't remember that one, where it was related to Golang and module versions. And then there's another one that I think Keith just linked. It's about it. It's the SPDX discussion.
Okay.
And shout out if I've lied to anybody or.
No, I think that we can do those back to back. So we can do the Go false negative stuff, and then we can talk about like the SPDX license list and how it integrates with CycloneDX and all the friction there.
Sounds good.
All right, let me get these links up, and then we'll go start with the false negative. All right.
Yeah. I don't know if anybody, I mean, I can give one over if anybody else wants to.
I think it might start to make sense to start with the GHSA.
Oh, yeah.
The GHSA link that's right there. That's how I wanted to start the discussion, but I also talked like all of stand up about this and stuff. Oh, look.
There's a
they fixed it.
Yeah, nice. They accepted the PR.
Cool.
We love it.
18 minutes ago, it looks like.
That was quick.
Okay.
I submitted it. Yeah, it took them less than 2 minutes to submit to accept it. So,
for those following along at home, we talked about this at stand up. Keith submitted a PR, and stand up was literally like an hour and a half ago, and now this is fixed. So well done, GHSA.
Yeah, and this is why, we like matching language ecosystem packages. Like basically anything GitHub Security Advisors has data on, we prefer to match with GHSA data because like there's a transparent and public process for getting the data corrected, as opposed to like a government agency you can email, and then they will do whatever it is that they do with their email if they wish to, and the government's not shut down.
well, and so specifically for this one, the change, if you scroll up to the two package names right there, as of a couple hours ago, it did not have the github.com/nwaples/rar decode, that first one. And so this is related to this discussion that I think Alex brought up, but they just added that in, so that's great. So we had a false negative in Grype that was reported. A user had that package installed at a version 1 something or other, and it wasn't getting picked up because the only package in this vulnerability was the one with the v2 at the end. And so this has led to a few different related discussions about Go package naming and things, but the main cause of the problem for them was the fact that it was missing from this vulnerability. So that should be fixed for them, the next database build. But I think there were a couple of other things. One of the things is that Syft is generating pearls with with package names that did not include the v2 at the end, for example, there. And so there's a pull request to change that behavior to make the entire module get included now. There are links from all this stuff. And I think we've all sort of come to the conclusion that for Go language PURLs, we should just put the whole module name in. There's a subpath section we were using before, and if we reference packages, stuff should go there. But we're not doing that on any of the Go packages that we're surfacing today, but that might show up in the future. So anyway, this person's thing should be fixed, but it raised a point or a question during the stand-up, which Alex brought up, which was if we have a version 2, a version that's reported against a version 2 name, and it says less than version 2, it would be assumed that it should also include version 1. But because the actual package name changes to have a v2 at the end, the question is, how should we update Grype to handle this in the correct way? Should we do something, and what should we do? I think that's what Alex was sort of originally talking about. So sorry, just to kind of give all the background there.
No, thumbs up. Because I wonder how prevalent. So like we found this one GHSA that someone had reported where they put in an entry in the vuln data for the v2 module specifically, even though it affected like the non-version module before v2 was made. I wonder how prevalent that is, where the vuln data doesn't capture all of the correct modules, because like Golang is unique in this way, like where the one of the 2 modes where I can bump the major version for a module, at one of those modes, it changes the name of the module. And thus, like, you actually need to track n many modules if you have n many major versions affected in theory. And I bet there's vuln data out there that just isn't accounting for this, which makes me suspect that Grype should have started accounting for this kind of stuff, where, if we see, some module that ends in V number, we should probably, so say it's V5, we should probably be searching for like V4, V3, V2, maybe V1, and version lists to like, hey, do we find matches here? Does that make sense for the version specified? And there's more that needs to be thought through, but it's trying to find the cases where, basically the version constraint crosses like multiple major versions in a way that's just not obvious.
Right. Yeah, and I think.
Forgive me for.
Go ahead, Dan.
Forgive me if this is just I'm not spun up on the sort of conventions, but is there something formal in the Golang ecosystem to where this is a relatively standard pattern? Because in the past, this is the kind of thing that like Linux distros you'd see from time to time, even with like OS packages. You get like Python, and then there's a Python 3. It's not compatible with 2. You need both, and so they would change it so the name of the package is Python 2, and there's also a name of a package called Python 3, and then they have their own versions, and that caused all sorts of problems. And then eventually it became module streams, where now the names are back to just Python, and you subscribe to a version stream. Whatever. I mean, it's kind of analogous. I was just wondering if in the Golang ecosystem, there's kind of a convention for having this like major bumps can include like the actual package name change.
Yeah, there is. I can't find the link now. There was a link in the. Thanks. I think Alex just posted the link. If you open that link and search for the string v2 and scroll all the way down, you will see the Golang packaging docs explicitly recommend this like soft rename. If you like search for v2, and I think it's the very last or second to last occurrence of the string v2. assuming it's the same docs that were opened at stand up.
That's the statement right
Oh,
there. Yeah, go up
it,
one
it,
more from what you found.
it,
And
it
keep
might
going.
not be. I think, Will, you're probably talking about this. I just posted another link. I think you're talking about this one.
Yeah, that was a really helpful utterance from a teammate in a previous Zoom chat, and the Zoom chat is ephemeral, and I didn't save enough of it. And like some of the Zoom chats are not ephemeral, but I can't figure out which ones or why it's those ones. So anyway.
I mean, there's essentially two. Tell me if I'm interrupting, but there's two ways that you can like bump a version. If you're trying to support multiple major versions at the same time, it makes sense to don't touch your module. Instead, you in your file system in your Git repo, you have a V1 package, a V2 package, V3 package, and they are not modules. However, a lot of folks, and I'd say most projects, like they're supporting one major version at a time. So what the convention is to just change the module to have a /v major version at the end of it, because the whole module is now structurally kind of moved forward to this new thing. So it can get confusing.
That can get, yeah, that seems, yeah.
There was one sentence in either the blog post or the official documentation when they talked about it where they're just like, just think of it as a brand new module, right? Because they want to protect against people accidentally rolling forward to whatever the new thing is. So by adding V2 to the end or by changing the name of the module, you protect the people who are on the supported older patch so that they don't get any surprises coming to the new one. And that's like what kind of I just treat them as two separate. And the good thing is that the updates to the GHSA records and all vulnerability data in this case should just have two separate packages now that apply the vulnerabilities depending on what side of the fence you land on.
Yeah.
And the thinking about this is that you're explicitly changing your import paths in both of these cases. So like moving to another major version is very explicit. That's by design from the Go authors.
Yeah, I think this is I just shared the link that we actually were looking for, or that at least I was actually looking for. I still had the tab open somewhere. And it explicitly recommends this practice of basically renaming your package in the go.mod file. And so in the right step 2 there, in the modules go.mod file, revise the module path to append the new major version number. Right. And so Go is sort of officially recommending, like if you make a semver breaking change, you should rename your module. And I think that's just surprising. I'm not aware of another ecosystem that does that. And so we have sort of the question is like, do we, like if example.com my module v2, if somebody says, versions less than 2.5.0 of example.com my module v2 were affected by the CVE, is v1 affected? And I think the answer probably depends on, like, I mean, sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't, but like by default, like, I mean, absence of further information. Anyway, one of the things that helped us with this particular false negative is that the Go vuln database did have, right? Keith, is that where you how you were able to arrive at the certainty to send this PR? Is because the Go vulnerability database says that the v1 name is also vulnerable, and so that gives us something to point at. I wonder if it might not be worth making like a script to, you can see package, you see the name, like there's name, the rarity code, and name rarity code v2, and so like these are listed as separately vulnerable packages in Go OSV data, which makes sense. I wonder if it's worth like basically looking for missing other major versions by comparing like GHSA to like Golang OSV. That might be a pretty simple script.
Yeah, and I'm actually I don't know much about like the Golang OSV reporting process myself. I've not gone through that. I actually wonder if it is their data all the time trustworthy in the same way, or like did we find a happenstance where they happen to get it right, but like they also have the same holes in their data set? I'm curious to what you're saying too, Will, but I'm also kind of wondering if I can like lean on that data set for the specific kind of thing we're looking for too.
I think that's a really interesting thing to look into because I could see this being like pretty ripe for human error where somebody that just doesn't quite understand this is the way it needs to, like doesn't consider these things as effectively separate modules or packages, just saying like put this in and then put fixed 220 here without realizing, nope, because you have a V2, you need to create a separate, as if it were a separate package. I could see that being a very, human error prone process.
But I think that goes to like one of Alex's earlier points, which is most Go developers are maintaining one major version at a time. Like it's very rare that you get a library that if you have to do a security fix, you would get the version 2, and then you'd go back and do the version 1. I'm not saying that doesn't happen. It's just like most people are on the train of like, roll forward. We're not supporting the old one anymore. Thank you for your time using it. Please use the new one.
Yeah. I also like wonder there could even be still a problem here. I don't know this for certain, so I'm not gonna say like, yeah, there's definitely an issue. But like check out these two entries. Like the first entry for the raw code, there's no symbols specified that because it's system specific. But for the second one, there is. And is that a mistake? Like, should those symbols also be up top? Or
Well,
I would read that to be everything unless otherwise specified.
Yeah, I mean, I read it as that too, but I mean, I'm just kind of curious if both are vulnerable, how come one of them only specifies symbols?
I wonder if it was more of a like one function module before, right? Because it seems like a pretty specific decoder, and so maybe the like new from file is like maybe putting stuff in it like moving around the public API in a way that you could call out specific symbols as being vulnerable more easily is what they did for V2. Totally speculating. We could go look at the V2 release notes, I guess, because that's one of the things actually like we might want to like I suppose we could go read source code and like try to prove that the vulnerability exists in the V1 code. So I think that's what I'm sort of hearing you say, Alex, is that like, is the V1 branch fake? Like, because it doesn't have any vulnerable symbols, it did like we just added it to GHSA because it was here. Did somebody else just add the V1 because the V2 was there? Like,
right. I mean, it's kind of my question. Like, so when you're across major versions, sure, the symbols can change because there's probably a big refactor between 1 and 2. That's usually why you would do that. But I guess I find it kind of odd that if they made a statement that this V2 is vulnerable for these symbols, that for the V1 they didn't make the same kind of statement. They just said, all vulnerable. And I don't. I wish I knew the reason behind that, or if it again is kind of arbitrary. In other words, if maybe the version range kind of dictated that, where like the author who made this said, oh, it's less than 2.2, and then somebody jumped to the conclusion of, oh, less than 2.2 includes the previous module version, which has no V2 at the end, and they just automatically made that entry, and they didn't add the symbols. So I don't know the answer. I haven't gone and looked. So,
and I wonder if we see also the other error where there's no /v2 on the package name, right? So if RD code less than 2.2.0, but it doesn't include the /v2 package, because that could also result in a miss, because an SBOM might have the /v2 package. Like, in other words, if the second, like, if we had like sort of only the second entry in this JSON, only the second affected package entry, but with the name from the first one, like that would probably be an error case. But I can see, like, that's how I read the GHSA when I first looked at it, because I wasn't thinking about these v2 paths. So anyway, we probably need to do research, and yeah, if anybody knows of other examples where there's like a GHSA that has like a broad version range that crosses like a /v whatever pseudo rename, um, let us know, because I think it could go either way, right? Like, in this case, we had probably had a false negative because we assumed that the v1 wasn't affected, but we could easily have a false positive by assuming that the v1 was affected, given exactly the same inputs. So,
Well, and I think like that's exactly what Alex's question kind of was earlier. I think like, hey, could we just deal with this in Grype, right? Like if we just run some queries that, do a db like command instead of an equals or something, right? Like we could pull all those versions and then do
right.
some more complicated logic and see like, oh, well,
Yeah.
I found all this stuff and it's not an exact match, but it's a version, version. The only difference is the version in the package name and, et cetera. Seems like a reasonable thing to me that would sort of like solve, I think, both sides of that equation, or it could if it was implemented the right way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard to know what to do. Like, given the GHSA as it was before your fix, like, is v1 a false negative, or after the fix is v1 a false positive? Like, there's like let's imagine we didn't fix this GHSA, but we do a smart fix to the Golang matcher in Grype. Like, did we fix a false negative or introduce a false positive? We don't know without like doing research, which
Yeah,
is a great thing to do, but it doesn't scale.
Oh, but
right.
it's also why like you should work from the foundation of the data, and that's why the assumption was make the PR first, and if we see it resolved, then we're good to go. Like we only do the business logic fancy matcher changes if like we don't have access to the data, we can't update it, or it's inconclusive what even the data should be at that point.
Yeah, I think somebody, probably one of us, maybe me, now that I'm suggesting it, should just diff the GHSA and go vulndb data and look for, like, I don't know, just look for things where it's like less than v3 with and without /v3 in the package name, or if there's no, like, I think it'd be interesting to assess the magnitude of the change here. We need to run a custom query that's basically like, give me all the GHSAs where the ecosystem is Go and the package ends in /vn.
But you also have to then cross-reference with the module cache or just the modules itself and see if they actually follow the version schema, like updates the suggested.
Right.
If they didn't just start September tagging and rolling their main library forward, kind of deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that'd be an interesting project, and shout out if anyone in the community wants to assist with that, because look what you get. You get a nice credit when there's a GHSA update. So.
That's pretty cool. Good job to you.
I'm famous.
Yeah, so I'll put out there, like, just a very cursory look at the code. I'm not convinced that v1 is vulnerable. I'd have to dig more, but
I can't believe that's
wrong.
what you were doing while we were like debating like different approaches. You were actually checking to see how accurate, if it's exploitable or not.
Yeah, and I don't know if I'm right, but no, just a cursory look. I'm like, I don't see it yet. So I'll change my mind in an hour. So.
But
this is why we need the symbol table update into the vuln database. Oh wait, the first entry doesn't have symbols associated with it. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why it doesn't have symbol. If the symbols don't exist, is it even exploitable?
But good news is, in some, the data sources are now in agreement, and before they weren't. So that's a good state to be in. Which also means, if you're right, Alex, and that turns out to be the case, presumably the Golang will get updated. The data sources should synchronize again, and we'll be back to where we are. But
Hooray!
yeah,
Full circle. I guess, is there
Yeah.
anything else on this
We didn't
topic?
talk about the Perl at all.
Oh my gosh, we didn't talk about the Perl at all.
Let's talk about the Perl real quick.
This one,
Keith,
this one's probably quicker. Yeah.
did you want to talk about the Perl, Keith? Or
I've been looking at plenty of pearls. I don't want to deal with
Okay.
pearls for another week or so.
So if we go back to the GHSA, which maybe we just closed, but the notice that those are different package names. So do they get different pearls? And this is kind of like, it's related to the question of like, do we it's related to the matching question, right? It's related to like, do we trim off the /vn before searching? Do we, kind of questioning Grype, but just like, if Syft finds /v2 should go in the package name, probably. But it seems like there's also an issue against the Perl spec where it's also suggested that you should have like a subpath, like the Perl should have like the name, like the top name in there, and then have like a pound v2 later in the URL.
Well, and I want to be very like specific about this one because the spec says that is for package subpaths, not module subpaths. Right. So like in Go, a module is the thing that you reference in the module system, right? And it has paths to packages that are beyond that root module. Those modules show up in your go.mod, for example, and things, but the packages don't show up there. But specifically for the spec, it says that the subpath is for packages and not module subpaths. So I just wanted that one little detail to be fairly clear.
So in other words, if I made a directory in my Go repo called /v2, then the Perl should have a subpath but not a rename. But if I renamed the package name in the Go mod file to have /v2, then we should have then we should change the name in the Perl but not the subpath. Is that what you're saying?
That is my understanding, yes.
But go get will do either of those, right? Like go get doesn't care which one you did.
No, Go Get treats them as two separate modules.
Yeah. Yeah. If you did go get on the version 1, at least without a version, for example, I don't think it's going to give you the version 2 module.
Right. No. What I mean is that like if I do go get, github.com and Waples RAR to code v2, and it doesn't matter to me whether there's a path in the repo at v2 or the go mod entry has appended /v2 to the package name. Like the consumer doesn't like from the perspective of installing, either way of stepping into v2 world gets you to v2. Is that correct?
Well, I don't remember if the module does not have the v2, and you go get with the v2 in the end.
When you do the migration, like when you do the bump to the v2, what happens is you put a new Go mod at the subpath. So like if you go to that rar code v2, there's a separate go.mod at that path that's different from the go.mod that's at the root or at whatever path the original.
I thought that can we bring up that repository then? just for an example, because I feel like I'm just misunderstanding.
I think it's confusing because like a bunch of different things work. Like it just magically makes a bunch of different permutations of this work. And so
So
like
there's no folder called v2 in here.
right. So that works when it doesn't have the folder. It also works if it has the folder named v2.
Right. If we click in the go.mod in here, see they put the module, they changed the name of the module. But I think you could also push to this directory a new go.mod file at /v2/go.mod in the repo root, and that would, and put all your v2 code under /v2, and that would also work.
And that's what they outline in their documentation of what to do. Like they're like,
right.
This is what we recommend.
I thought they recommended. I thought there were like two recommended paths, but anyway, regardless of what they recommend, so we're saying that like if I go get something, I use the package name that has /v2 in it, but depending on what upstream did, I might end up with a different Perl, and that like.
What package name you at module name?
Yes. So if
Yeah,
I do
just
go
checking.
get, if I go get, github.com, my project, whatever, if I go get with /v2 on the end,
yeah,
then I can't tell as a client, or don't care as a client, whether /v2 is a path to a. So anyway, I was just trying to understand if there are two ways of, if go getting the same string results in two different Perls depending on how it's passed. But I think it doesn't, because I think in both cases the Perl would have /v2 on the name. Is that right, Keith?
I think so. I think it entirely depends on what's in the go.mod. If they have updated their go.mod to have a v2 at the end, and you like, it could be at the root or it could be in a subdirectory that's v2. But either way, if this is what's in the go.mod, that's the thing that should be in the Perl. That is my understanding of this.
yeah. That's also my latest model, and I'll say I'm on mental model revision 6 for Perls and Golang. So walking on an eggshell somewhat, but that's also where I'm at too.
Yeah, it like you're absolutely right. It gets confusing. There are so many different permutations of this particular thing that it's not my favorite aspect of Golang, to be quite honest, but I believe it's what is in the go.mod is the answer to what should be in the Perl.
Well, and there's somewhere here. Here we go. I mean, I'll drop this in the chat for the. I'm pretty certain this gets even worse, like submodules. There's this open issue in the Perl spec about how to deal with it, and this kind of thing is what makes me feel like Grype, in the same way that we were just talking about, Grype should be smart about /v number suffixes on modules. I think Grype should also learn to be smart about, I found variants of a Perl. Maybe I should try searching for other, I found this exact Perl. I'm going to munge it a little bit to change what the module actually is. And so if I find a subpath, maybe we take that subpath and we put it on the namespace and name. And so we have a longer module so that we're searching for something that's more specific. And if we get a hit in the vuln data, it's probably correct. Because why would the vuln data have, a path to a spot that isn't the module? That's not how vuln data would work for Golang. So I think in the same way we were just talking about it for v number major suffixes, I think the same thing kind of applies for Perls, or we should have Grype get smarter to find variants of the Perl, because there's so many wrong Perls out there for Golang, depending on the ecosystem. For all the stuff we were just, at least for some of the stuff we were just chatting about, plus more. So I feel like this the false negative issue that was filed is probably a good candidate to capture both of these things.
Because
At
I
least
guess
one
we right. So I think the problem is we could have, because in Go, like a directory with a bunch of code in it that's inside a module is a package, right? Like you use the keyword package to declare it. And so we can imagine a Perl or a package, but then you can also have like a monorepo with multiple go.mod files in it. And in that case, I think the path relative to the repo root is part of the name.
The subpath.
No, exactly what you said, Will. Yes.
Oh,
There's a good example. Let me just the Syft repo, I think, has a perfect example. Hold on.
Can you say it again? I think maybe I missed something.
So the Perl of a Go package in the Go sense has, like, if I want to refer to like Syft file digest or whatever,
Right.
then that's github.com Anchore Syft subpath file digest.
Yeah.
But if we had a go.mod file in there and it could be go get gotten separately,
that's a submodule.
then
Right.
the name is a submodule, right? Right, exactly.
Yes,
so
yes,
like
sorry,
the
I missed the
SDK is
submodule part.
that's a great example, because like if we go to that, I bet if we go to the SDK v2 repo under service internal accept encoding, there is a Go mod.
Yeah.
And that is its own module that you can depend on. Whereas if I was trying to make a Perl just to the code there and it wasn't a module, it would be a subpath.
Exactly. Yep. And I dropped a link to that very thing, and you can see. Yeah, this is like the service internal accept encoding. So it's clearly a path within the repo. There's a top level Go mod for this, but there is also a Go mod for this particular package, which makes the Perl for this particular thing that entire thing that's in that module.
Right. That the thing that comes after the module keyword in the Go mod is the name in the Perl.
Right.
And that's actually a good way to explain it. It's just like if you have a go.mod file that declares a module, that module is the name in the Perl. And then if you're referring to a path within that module, that's a subpath.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, but my question is there any normalization for submodules?
I don't understand what you mean by normalization.
Like, do you escape any slashes? Like, in other words, is the whole submodule supposed to fit purely in the name, or is it supposed to be split across the namespace and the name of the Perl?
So
yeah, and I think that's what this
see
discussion's about, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Like, do you use slashes for everything, or do some of the slashes get escaped by like %2f or whatnot, so that you know that it's in the name and not in the namespace?
Right, because and that's sort of weird too, because like part of like even in the AWS SDK example, like part of it is like a host name and URL path to like literally go to the repo, and part of it is like a path, like a file system path within the repo, and like those are like undifferentiated, mushed together in the module name. So
that is a weirdness. My question is, what part of that is the namespace? Like, it just in a general sense, like, is it GitHub? Is it because it's on GitHub? Is it GitHub and the org because it's a particular org in GitHub? Like,
definitely know people who register a domain name to put and like have a redirect in it that goes to their actual source code repo, like an indirection, so that they don't have like github.com some org, like some project name in the go get. Like you can go get domain the project controls instead.
If I was ignoring everything I knew about Perls and was doing it on day one, and I was stuck with like say exactly what the Perl spec says, and not about this particular type. I would say for this type, I would say no namespace is allowed, and I'd say everything is the name. Like that's what I would want, because it's too confusing otherwise.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? Is the namespace the GitHub org? What if you're hosting Git at a place that has more or fewer path components before you get to a specific repo, right?
Yeah.
And
well, and it just simplifies everything. You don't have to escape anything either. So I don't.
Right. And I think the general consensus, I mean, there's obviously plenty of discussion about this all over, but the general consensus is that people want nice looking pearls. And so the name and the namespace, treating it just kind of as the name is like okay for this type, and what people want to do, generally speaking.
Yeah. I mean, I think for the stuff we generate, wholeheartedly agree. And then I guess it's for the stuff we slurp in, we should just make certain that we account for it all. Slurp in and Grype, I should say. So stuff we generate in Syft, I agree. You should just have slashes, treat it like a name. There are no namespaces. And then it's the Grype side that is okay, we should make certain that all the cases, all the variants that people are pontificating about are kind of accounted for. Like these are basically different search variants. Like we wouldn't be searching for one package, we'd be searching for n many packages based off of however the normalization that we would do is. And the only one that seems sensible right now is, the decoding always occurs. So like the %2fs always go away. And then the only thing that would need to be searched for is if there is a subpath. So you search for the subpath first. So you search for a module with a subpath appended on first. And if you get no hits, then you search for everything, ignoring the subpath. That's assuming if they got the subpath in the Perl in wrong, like the bug that Syft has. So.
Yeah. Okay. So summarizing all of the things we talked about, sounds like we have one definite change in Grype. And I don't think it can really live anywhere else, but one definite change to account for the subpath as an additional search if we have a subpath in a Golang Perl specifically. Is that? I'm happy to write that issue up. I think that's like a very specific thing that can happen by itself.
Thanks. Well, that was our first topic.
That was our first topic. We're at 45 minutes in. Holy moly. Interesting one, though. We crawled all over the space.
Don't worry, guys. You'll not see that topic until next Christmas when it still is not resolved on that bill. We save these specifically for the holidays.
You're like, let's see where the discussion is at now. Popping all the way back up, there was an SPDX topic also.
Yeah, we had this one from also Stand Up, and we wanted to maybe talk about it on the live stream because our thoughts on this matter are pretty important, just as far as the types of SBOMs that Syft produces and whether or not the validation tools flag them as valid or not valid. So I can probably kick it off at least from the start. One of the things that we have on Syft is an automated pull request that looks to see if the SPDX license list has bumped forward and includes any new licenses to be said are valid SPDX IDs. One of the things that CycloneDX does is when they validate SBOMs, they take from this list of blessed SPDX IDs and say, when you create a license for a package in CycloneDX, your list of IDs, anything that's in the ID field for that license, must be in this blessed enum. And sometimes these things get desynced. So SPDX gets ahead, there's like a brand new one, or CycloneDX, the validation is pulling from an old source. And if you look at the top, you see how that $ID in the JSON there, Dan, that you have?
Yeah.
Is cyclonedx.org/schema/spdx.schema.json. So what this file allows on the CycloneDX GitHub side is they're able to update this file for a given draft or for a given version of the CycloneDX schema. So they sometimes update this file without bumping the version of the CycloneDX schema. So there isn't one thing that's blessed for a certain version of CycloneDX. It just rolls and gets updated, and they either bump the schema because they have other changes in CycloneDX, or they just keep it the same and reference the new document that just has the updated licenses. What we want to talk about, though, is when our tools have kind of moved forward and pull in a new license list, but the validation tools have not. And so if we create something that has a new blessed ID that the validator hasn't updated to recognize, we get an invalid SBOM. That's the summary of the topic that we're talking about.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add to that, like one thing we find, like an experience some users have is they do Syft, they ask it to write a CycloneDX SBOM, which Syft is happy to do. But Syft is often ahead of CycloneDX validation tools, specifically in regard to the SPDX license list. So we'll get an issue that says, hey, Syft is making invalid, like the CycloneDX official verify this SBOM CLI says it's not a valid SBOM, but it turns out that basically that CLI was built with an older enumerated list of OK SPDX license IDs than Syft was. And there's nothing else wrong with the SBOM. And that's kind of frustrating, because it's one of those situations where I think Syft is doing the right thing, and that it's like using the recent SPDX license ID list to give you the best licenses. But also, like, there are tools that expect a CycloneDX SBOM that is valid according to this really narrow spec, where the license ID is an enum, and the like set of things that are allowed to be in the enum is older than the set of things Syft puts in. So it's really frustrating, because we have to choose between like lagging CycloneDX and identifying licenses worse, or like having people report that like dependency track or whatever won't import our CycloneDX SBOMs because the license list is ahead. And that's did I summarize that pretty well, Chris? Like that just
Yep.
That's sort of the end user impact.
We're caught in a rock and a hard place of wanting to do the right thing, but also not wanting to like make our users' experience bad.
It also seems like a little bit of a consistency challenge, though, because, you know, let's say CycloneDX, this enum wasn't SPDX strings. You know, like, let's say for some reason they put C in front of all those strings. Then our implementation would just have to pull in the schema every time somebody was making a CycloneDX thing and use that list, right? But because there's a connection between the two, in my mind, the question is, what do we do when SPDX list is updated, the Cyclone schema isn't, we detect one of the things, what do we call it, right? Because now we have to choose, like the SPDX, the right answer, the most current answer is X, but Cyclone supports Y. Keeping a mapping of what it is now versus what it used to be in Cyclone last rev doesn't really seem feasible. And I don't know how to solve that problem.
And it's worse than that, because, you know, it's that problem that you're describing. But like in the best case scenario, this would have been issues across like static releases of stuff. But they're updating the schema, you know, whenever. So it can happen at any time in between Syft releases, in between like validation tool releases. It's like there's not like a single point anywhere in the timeline where it makes sense to like start changing the behavior.
It gets even one level nastier than that, Alex, because some of the libraries used by the validator are middle libraries, or like middleware to the upstream schema change. So it takes like a schema change in the official CycloneDX repo to then get populated to these middleware libraries, and then for these middleware libraries to then be pulled in by the validation tooling. So there's like 3 degrees of indirection almost that you trace the changes through for when and sometimes like the upstream full official CycloneDX like schema is, we have the latest new thing. But because look, like Dan, what's hosted right there is behind what's actually on the official GitHub repo right now. So we'll see the official GitHub repo, then we'll see like the DNS or what they host get updated. Then we'll see the libraries that consume all of that get updated, and then we'll finally see the validator pull in those new libraries, and then we'll start that same song and dance over again when SPDX drops a new list.
Right, and it's really challenging. Like if we had they could maybe put like version strings in they're effectively like vendoring the SPDX schema, but without a version at the path. So
I
we
think
can't.
that's what the comment is actually.
Yeah,
Right, the
that's what
comment is a
is.
version, but they're serving it. Like if you look at the path they're serving it
Oh,
from,
yeah.
I can't request a different version, right?
Right.
And it version like this file versions independently of the schema version, and so there's no like
And
so we can't it would be one thing if we said like Cyclone DX 1.6 uses version 3.2 of SPDX. Like that would be a fact that we could just write down in some messy code and it would be okay. But it's really like there's like a moving target effect.
Yeah, 1.6 uses whatever the ecosystem has decided to be updated to on any given day.
I have a promise related topic that doesn't sound related, not all too related. So in Grant, Chris, you and I were chatting about. I was a while ago now. Yeah. The one of the Grant, our license scanning tool, is has the same kind of static behavior for the SPDX license list. That is our definition of the source of truth for licenses that we're processing and validating in Grant is relative to a static list of the SPDX license list that we pulled in at build time.
Yeah, we bundle it and ship it with a binary. Yeah.
Exactly. And one of the things that we had been chatting about was, well, wait a second, shouldn't that, and because the license list, the SPDX license list is versioned. They're on 3.27 now. That one we were just looking at for Cyclone, they're on 3.26. One of the things we've been talking about is like, hey, what if Grant this is configurable, where yeah, we have a static set that's baked into the binary that we could use by default, but a user can override by saying, hey, I want you to use SPDX license list version 3.21 because my lawyers told me so. And we would then pull down the asset at runtime, cache it somewhere, and then use that license list for like whatever checks you were doing. We didn't pull the trigger on such feature. We still can, but this kind of reminds me of that spiritually, where it's like, well, okay, like we have a baked SPDX license list. And we have something relative to what the format is claiming must be true, and like it's not versioned with the format version, which is kind of awkward. Which all this hints to be runtime related things. Like maybe there should be a way to say, well, I really want SPDX version X when Syft is doing artifact, or sorry, doing any kind of cataloging, or maybe at formatting, I want to like downgrade whatever I find based off of like the list that happens to be there, out in the world for this SPDX schema that Cyclone DX hosts. Where it's like there'd be two dimensions here of like having runtime behavior where I pull this data. Yeah, Chris.
I think that's it would be useful to have, but the final connective tissue there is the difficult part of knowing which one at runtime we would want to generate like the Cyclone DX document for, given that there's this moving target that Will talked about, which is the schema on GitHub could be here, what's published on DNS could be here, and what the validator tooling's pulling in could be there, which is like in that X, Y, and Z scenario, those are three different lists, right?
Right.
So we don't know which value to supplant in at runtime, because I mean the one that we'd have to figure out is the query what the validator is using, but that could still be two iterations behind what the official documents or official like GitHub
Right.
is.
I wonder if the validator is baking this in, like if the validator like includes a copy of the schema, or if it makes network requests. It must include a copy of the schema. I don't know.
I'm pretty sure I've
Um,
seen some
I,
that just make a regular expression with the names.
Oh
Well,
man,
that's
that
even more
sounds
fun.
extra fun. But then there's the second question that Dan brought up, which is like, given that we detect an SPDX license that is like too new, it's a valid SPDX ID, but it's like too new for the CycloneDX validator we're expecting to hand off to. Like, what do we call that license? There's like a
Well,
fallback where you can just like use the name, right?
Right.
Like,
For I think that is a known path. Like meaning
okay,
where we got into trouble is because there's I'm probably gonna get this wrong. I get Cyclone and SPDX in terms of what fields exist mixed in my head pretty regularly now at this point. Um, so for there is I think two fields. One where I could say like here's the SPDX license, and another one would say like here's a string, um, and I think that would be the downgrade path. It's all about detecting that case. Am I crossing wires here? Am I thinking of SPDX format instead of Cyclone? I could be. I'm gonna go
I
check
think
myself.
Cyclone has like a ID or name. It's one of ID or name, and like ID is an enum and name is a string.
and
I
name,
Yeah.
could be
name could be anything.
wrong.
Yeah, name
Yeah.
literally has no restrictions on it. It's ID that throws the validator errors.
right. It's the same for both of the formats. They have the
Okay.
same options.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that's our downgrade path. It's just the detection part, right? Because the detection is by nature like dynamic, because they can just update that schema at any time without really telling folks. So
Well, I mean, I guess the question that I had is, and sorry, I was finishing writing up the issue for anyway, uh is there some desire to optionally specify a license list and have multiple versions of the license list in Syft so that we could, I mean, if we had multiple versions of the license list, we could very easily tell, yes, this is one of the IDs or not. Even if we've done the parsing and made our own internal model with the SPDX IDs based on the latest one, at export time for the formats, we could pretty easily say, oh, they're requesting this license list version, move it into the name field, move it into the
right.
other spot in SPDX. Like that wouldn't be too hard to do. We would just have to have some, way to tell which licenses go where for some different format or for the different versions.
Right. I mean, that's what I was trying to say is that the cataloging can remain the same based off of whatever SPDX license list we have hard coded, and you're right. It's like the format encoder side that makes the decision. It's no longer a static decision. It's one that's dynamic. But like I get stuck at the decision point is based off of like what happens to be hosted. Well, I guess it's two things, right? It's either whatever's hosted at that point in time for that SPDX schema on Cyclone site, or it's the validator tool if they happen to be using that release. Like I don't know, and that's where I get a little lost. Like, what's the right way to tell Syft to make that decision?
I think it could be two different things, right? One, and this was like going to be related to a suggestion that I had, which I'm maybe is a dumb suggestion anyway. But I mean, we do have this file, so at the time we build Syft, we can tell what the latest CycloneDX license list should be, right? So at least we could have that number and potentially have those two sets of things that we include directly in Syft, so we know that. But if we included more, then the user could just, if for some reason they know their tool hasn't been updated, they could specify something, right, with like, license list version 123 or whatever it is. Like, we could let the user do that, and that would, let them be happy with the current versions of the tools they're stuck with.
Yeah, I mean, baking in more lists. Let folks override.
Or specify it, maybe. Right? I mean, it's basically just a list of strings.
Oh, you're gonna put the strings in a config somewhere.
I mean, it could be an option anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think you guys are onto something though. Like at the end of the day, I feel like the user problem is probably not so much, I want to use this list of strings, but I want to use this particular validation tool, and it either is or isn't working. And I don't yet see with the galaxy of moving parts how to just make it so that at any point in time when you generate one of these documents, that's going to be stable.
I wonder if there's
there.
like a way we could just pass in like a don't know about that yet list. Like if you know, if the CDX validator CLI is like, I've never heard of the artistic distro license, which I think is the new one that Brooks had the other day that started this discussion. I want you know, then the user can pass like dash dash no SPDX ID artistic dist, and then we'll just pretend that one isn't there and emit that one as a name instead, like so that they have like an escape hatch to like take the error from their validator and feed it back in.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
We're at time though, aren't we?
Yeah, I just noticed the clock as well. Yep, well, you know, we started the session with 2 topics you guys wanted to discuss, and we discussed the 2 topics.
We did it.
Interesting stuff. But yeah, we'll let everyone go for now. Thank you all so much, as always. Sorry to cut the discussion short, but I think we chewed on this one a bit. We'll have to think a bit more about it. But thanks as always for attending, and we'll see you next week, same time. Have a good one, everyone. Thank you, guys.
Cool.
You all.
Okay.
Cheers.
So yeah, thank you.